participants. Tim is an urban planner for more than 20 years, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. And since 2014, he's been working as expert advisor for the city of Leuven, where he prepared a very ambitious mobility plan, which transformed the city in cycling city #1 in Belgium. So this is probably why the Belgian network of sustainable mobility rewarded him, or rewarded Tim, with the title of Mobility Person of the Year, or as they say it in Leuven, Mobiliteitspersoonlijkheid. Tim,
Okay.
once again, good morning. Did I say that okay? It was kind of Dutch.
That was with a German accent.
Yeah, I know. But did you bike to this conference, or are you at home?
I am at home, unfortunately.
Okay, so the same case for everybody. Tim, the webinar is all yours, so go ahead. And I would like to also invite participants to ask Tim questions, and I will read them afterwards. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, I start sharing my screen.
Yes.
I hope it works.
I will wait until it does, and then
Share.
I will disappear. Yeah, you started screen sharing, and I think it works.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I also heard the very clear introduction of Karen about the topic of today. And I think it's good also to hear the story of Leuven. We are a mid-sized city. I suppose there are a lot of mid-sized cities also in Slovenia. And I think it makes sense to also explain the story of how we are dealing with this micro-mobility. But like you also were mentioning, before we focused on this micro-mobility services, we also focused on some very drastically and radically change in mobility. Just a short introduction to the city of Leuven. So we are a mid-sized city of just a little bit more than 100,000 inhabitants. But what is special about Leuven is that besides these 100,000 inhabitants, we do have 65,000 students. So we are a very important university town, city. And the presence of this university gives also a very high dynamic to our city, but also to our region. And despite we are a mid-sized city, we also won some weeks ago the European Eye Capital Awards, where we are more or less this year the most the European capital of innovation, where we were in competition with Copenhagen, Barcelona, Vienna. So in that perspective, that's important. And the reason why we won that award is that we are not reinventing rocket science, but the main reason is that we really have a clear cooperation model with research institutions, with companies, and with our citizens, and that mix of cooperation really works very active, and that we really are a living lab of a lot of things related to sustainability. Important to know, we are a city located at the east of the Brussels capital region. And we really are a city with a very high modal share of cycling. So on city level, around 40% of our trips are done by on city centers level, more than 40%, I will explain later, but also on the level of the complete city, more than 20% of our trips are made by bicycle. We are located at the east side of the Brussels capital region. And this also means that we are more or less in the slipstream of this metropolitan area. And we also do face with huge challenges regarding congestion. This has to do with the slipstream of the capital region of Brussels, but it of course also has to do with the increase of inhabitants in Leuven. We really are a growing city. Every year we have 1,000 inhabitants more. We are also a growing city regarding students. We are a growing city regarding jobs. So this dynamic also causes much more trips. And looking to the model split, and that is very important in the decisions which we have made recently, on city center level, we really are a cycling city. Almost half of our trips are made by bicycle. But when we are going to look more on the regional level, we really do see that car trips are still the main transport mode. And just focusing on all the car trips that are done on our territory, 75% of the car trips are not caused by our inhabitants. They are caused by the people that come outside of the region. Keep in mind that aspect because it's important in the further explanation of my story. Then last element on my introduction. In Leuven, we do have a red line, or let's call it really a green line, that we have the ambition to become a climate neutral city by 2030. And it's not only the ambition of the city, it's the ambition of a cooperation model where at this moment more than 600 partners, stakeholders, do make commitments. It's a very clear organization, Leuven 2030, where city government, businesses, academia, but also inhabitants are members. And all these members really do take actions and commitments to become a climate neutral city. And regarding transport, we do have the goal of doubling our public transport trips, doubling our cycling trips. Why? To face with this huge problem of congestion, to take control of car trips. And it's not because we want it, it's because it's really necessary to keep our city accessible. And within that context, the city of Leuven, we have a sustainable urban mobility plan. And a little part of that plan we have implemented some years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. It was the traffic circulation plan of our city center. And that was a quite radical plan where we have reorganized the traffic circulation, but where we also have did a drastic upgrade of the quality of our public domain regarding pedestrians and cyclists. We have doubled the car-free zone, the pedestrian zone, and we have invested a lot in cycling facilities and cycle comfort. And the cars are still welcome in our city, but they are organized in these different zones. They can't cross the city through these zones. It's important to know that that plan, it was also not at all obvious to implement it. Like Karen explained it in her presentation, we needed really high political courage to do that plan on that short term. But the impact of the plan was that in 3 years' time, we got a shift of 63% of car trips to 49%, and an increase of 32% bicycle trips to 47% of bicycle trips. So that is really a huge step forward in becoming that cycling city of Leuven. This plan was focused on the district of the city center. At this moment, we are implementing and preparing a similar plan or similar plans in our other city districts. And one of the effects of such plan is that besides riding a lot of riding bicycles, we of course have also a lot of standstill bicycles. And that is a problem or a luxury, but also regarding that issue, we have to face and to look for solutions. Solutions that are in the relation of also offering a wide range of bicycle parking facilities. And then I come to the topic of today regarding what do we need regarding micro shared mobility services and how we are integrating, for instance, bicycle sharing schemes in our mobility strategy. What is very important on that is that in our sustainable urban mobility plan, we do have a position for shared bicycles or micro shared mobility services, but they have a key role in being an alternative for these long car trips that come to our city center. And we would like to replace it by public transport in combination with last mile shared mobility services. That's the key element in why we would like to invest in shared mobility services. Of course, also on neighborhood level, it is an added value that we can offer also shared mobility services to our inhabitants, and we also do it, but it's not the key element why we do it. The key element regarding higher cycle use is having a higher bicycle ownership. And I explain it further why we do it on that distance levels of 0 to 15 kilometers, 15 because the e-bikes are now really not so marginal anymore. They are key position also in Leuven. We want to have pedestrian trips and cycle trips. On the higher distance, we would like to replace this 75% of car trips coming to the city of Leuven by the combination of public transport, shared mobility services, and going on foot. And that's important. And just to explain where we are now in Leuven, regarding car sharing, we are doing car sharing already for 15 years. And at this moment, 3 inhabitants in 100 are doing car sharing. It sounds little. There is still a high potential in increase, but it is quite a lot when we compare it in a lot of cities in Europe, but also in Belgium. We are, with that figure, car sharing city number 1. Regarding car sharing, we also see a really increase every year of more car sharing in our city. It's not only in our city, it's in a lot of European cities. So car sharing is a key element in our shared mobility services. Why? Because for every car in a sharing system, we can replace 8 to 10 private cars that don't need parking space anymore on our public domain. So car sharing is for us a key element in parking management, in dealing with parking pressure, because of we have also a lack of public space. And it's not only one company who's offering car sharing services in Leuven. There are several companies with an own fleet, but also providers, platforms, which inhabitants can use to share their own car with, for instance, neighbors. And that's working quite good in Leuven. You see that increase of numbers. Then related to bike sharing, like I already explained, main focus is we would like to have these shared mobility services as an alternative for the unimodal car, long car trip. We would like to have the pre and after trip done by shared mobility services in combination with public transport. The other issue on bike sharing is that we really would like to focus on specific target groups in our city where we would like to have a service related to bike sharing. I will explain it later. And the other things I already explained about this bike ownership. In Leuven and in many cities in Europe, there are different bike sharing systems. You have the back to one, where you take the bike, use that bike and come with the same bike to the same spot again. We do have that system, the blue bike system, on our main public transport hubs. And we are expanding it also at our parking places at the edge of our city, that you come with a car, come with a train, take the blue bike, use the blue bike and come back to the same spot. Also, the back to many, this gives you the service that you can leave your bike at certain spots in the city and that you use another bike to get back. And then the free floating issue where you have free space and you can choose whatever you wanted. Just already to explain to all of you, free floating, we are really not fan of it in Leuven. I explained the blue bike system. It's already working for for several years. We are expanding it to these different spots. Then bike sharing for children. What is this system? It's the Velo KD project. And we do have a lot of young families, and every year these families have to need to buy a new bicycle for their children that are growing up. And for that, we have now an alternative. We can give to our inhabitants a full service contract with a high-level bike included, the maintenance, where our inhabitants pay €60 per year, and then they can have a high-quality children bike growing up with their children, and they can replace it every year or every 2 years. For social target groups, they have a minimum tariff of only paying €12 a year, and then they have a full service top bicycle for children. A similar initiative we offer to our schools. We have a lot of cycle trips of pupils coming to the school, but not everybody is coming with the bike to the school. And for the schools that want to go to the swimming pool, to the sport lots, to a school trip, we offer a bicycle at school to these schools so that they can do the school trips with bicycles. That is done by an NGO company, Velo, who is offering the bikes, who is doing the maintenance. And the schools, but together with the city, they pay around €500 per bike for that full service contract. But all students have then their own bike of this bike to do the school trips. And they don't have to pay for that. Then another example, which is focused on target groups. We have a buggy booker system in our city center. And what is this thing? For young families that cycle to our city, but the children are too small to do that cycle trips and they are behind on the rack of the bicycle. A lot of families decide, yeah, we take the car, put our buggy in the car, and then we visit the city with our little children. To avoid that, we offer our young families that they have a free buggy. If they come with the bike to the city of Leuven, they can have a free buggy to do the visit of our city, just to focus on stimulating also young families to keep on cycling to our city. And then another element, it's not bike sharing, it's more or less bike leasing. We have a swap bike company, which is offering a full service contract to all inhabitant students. They can lease such a bike. It costs €15 a month. It's quite a cost. But for that price, all these users get a bike, full service contract on maintenance. If the bike is broken, they have just to put on the app, and in 1 hour, it is swapped by another bike. So that's a service that is also done in Leuven. But this swap bike system is already active in a lot of Dutch cities, but now also in a lot of Belgium cities. And then I go into detail of what we are facilitating as a city. To our inhabitants, we have the car sharing, which is replacing private cars. But also we would like to offer cargo bike sharing, which is also going to replace cars, because for some of the trips, you can use a cargo bike, but it takes space, it's costly, and don't need it every day. And that's why we are now implementing also a cargo bike sharing system together with a private partner, Cargo, where we are organizing cargo bikes on neighborhood level in a back-to-one system. Another system which is implemented recently is also an electrical shared bike, where also on neighborhood level, but also on the regional level, we offer a system of electrical shared bikes, also offered by a private partner. And what about free floating? Free floating, the word is really suggesting a door-to-door trip. And within the whole range of transport modes, there is only one transport mode who can claim door-to-door, and that is walking. It's really important to understand that walking is the one and only door-to-door trip. And that's why we are also very critical in what free floating can offer to us. And like Karen explained it in her presentation, it's very important to understand what kind of role local authorities can and should play. Like Karen explained it in this history of dumb shared bikes to smart bikes, shared bikes. As soon as the bikes went smarter, it was not only anymore local government who had the complete control. And that's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. We are also fun, and we are also supporting that private partners can do innovation in our city, can offer high-level service levels regarding transport. But it's important that we are responsible for our public domain. And this means that we, as a local authority, we have to stay the market master of our public domain. This means we are going to set the gaming rules, how our public domain is used. And what we explicitly really would like to avoid is a complete mess of bikes or e-scooters, which really are wrong for our pedestrian trips or other trips. And like Karen explained it, some years ago, a lot of cities were overwhelmed by, for instance, the Chinese bikes. It was the same in Leuven. All these Chinese operators, they were knocking on the door to get started in Leuven. And I explain it when it's an expression in Belgium. When the fox preaches passion, farmers watch on your geese. I mean, when it's for free, you have to ask some questions. And one of the questions I ask myself is, who is paying all these services? And there was a lot of capital in these companies, but it were mostly capital from online banking. And online banking is really an interesting business. And in using your apps, connecting to bikes, always there is an online transaction, and that was and is the business model of a lot of these shared mobility providers. There is no problem with that is a business model, but there is a problem if that is the only business model. And that was what we saw in the Chinese approach. The service level on the level of mobility was so low that they finally had to disappear from a lot of cities. And I explained it also in these bikes. So for instance, the quality level of these bikes was that they were just good enough to cycle downhill. for the rest, they really had no quality level. And that is important, that we take in control and we set the service levels to welcome operators that can fulfill these service levels. And there are two myths that also a lot of these operators promise to the cities. One of the myths is, with our bicycle sharing schemes, we are going to increase bicycle use. In one way or another, there is some, it's a little bit correct. But when focusing, for instance, to the city of Leuven, at this moment, we do have in our city center, looking to the amount of inhabitants and cycles, we have 100,000 cycle trips every day. When we would have implemented a bicycle sharing scheme of 1,000 public bikes, which is a very high scale regarding to when looking to the scale of Leuven, we would have been successful in having 5,000 cycle trips every day. So with these public bikes, we would have been succeeded of maximum 2% of the trips in the city of center of Leuven and 5% of the cycle trips, but not extra trips. So 95% of our cycle trips, they will always be done by private or leased bikes. This doesn't mean that we don't welcome bicycle sharing schemes. They are welcome, but focused on addition to public transport, combination of cycle with public transport, and when the special bikes like a cargo bike, an e-bike, which you don't need every day. Other myth, these operators, they promise they solve the problem of parking pressure, a real problem in Leuven. And free floating, it will solve everything. You even don't need parking facilities. But then you have again to think these free floating bikes at 4:30 in the morning. A lot of these bikes also need a place to stay, also need public space. And that's why we are a little bit critical in offering free floating shared mobility services, especially in the city center where we have a lack of public space. And so that's why we really have in Leuven a very clear strategy in welcoming shared mobility services, but we are also, as a local authority, offering public space at our mobile points. And that's the idea. We are offering spatial clustering of shared mobility services on our e-hubs, mobile points, hop-in points. They have a lot of names. But that's what Karen was talking about on different locations in our city. And we are now implementing more than 50 mobile points in our city. We offer a complete range of shared mobility services, even also parcel lockers for e-commerce activities on neighborhood level. We are doing that with a wide range of shared mobility services. Our inhabitants are also involved because they can ask that they would like to have a mobile point, that they can also explain what kind of mobility services they really would like to have in their neighborhood. So they also have a key role in detecting and deciding where our mobile points are going to be located. And that's very important. Like Karen also explained, we need to have some regulation. When you do it completely for free without regulations, it gives chaos. When you do it really fixed chase stations and so on, then you have a lot of regulations, but then it's also going to cost a little bit more. But important is that we decide that we are the market master of our public domain. And what I explained, the more we are going to have regulations and put the service level higher, the higher the cost will also be for the local authority, because offering these kind of services, it's of course not somebody has to pay for that service.
Yeah, we just lost Tim, I'm afraid. So we'll just ask you to remain on your seat, and we'll wait for Tim to come back.
Oh,
Possibly.
did you
Tim,
lost me?
yeah, but you're back, so I'm glad. And go ahead.
Yeah, I
You're
see
in.
a message that my internet connection is weak.
Yeah, it was yellow. Your signal was yellow, but now you're white again. So go ahead.
Okay.
Not a problem.
But in that range then of market regulation, when you want to go to give the market complete freedom, it can be a choice and it will cost you nothing. Eh? But then you will get the Chinese situation. When you don't want any freedom, you have to do a tender and put all the rules like you want it, and you have one partner who's going to do it for you. But then you are not supporting innovation, because private companies really, we need them to get innovation in transport services. But that's what we are doing now in Leuven. We have regulated and we have set up the service levels that we would like to have, and all the operators that fulfill these service levels, they will get a permission. So what we did in the first stage is we have a prohibition, so we forbid all private partners to do shared mobility services on our public domain. Everybody who has not got a license is not allowed to do activities in Leuven. And to get a license, you have to fulfill minimum service levels regarding the quality of the operator, the quality of the service, the way you are going to use our public space, the way you are going to offer us data, the way you are going to be interoperable with mass services, with other shared mobility services, and last but not least, the way how enforcement is organized. If your clients are putting the bikes on wrong places, we will get it up. Who is going to pay for it? So these are the elements we have put in regulations in Leuven. And it gives some freedom to the market, but regarding how they are going to use our public space, there is no freedom. It's the city who is taking control. And where we are now is that in September, the week of mobility, our Minister of Transport of the Flemish region, she opened the first mobi points. She calls it the hop-in points, but it are these spatial clusterings. And we are going to implement 50 of them in 2021. So we are preparing it now. But also on the regional level, the Minister of Transport has now reserved a budget of 100 million euro to build the hardware of our shared mobility services. And I'm not going into detail on how we do it with the e-scooters, but it's completely the same approach. In our regulations, we set the quality levels of e-scooter companies. But at this moment, our city council has decided we are not going to open the market for e-scooters for Leuven. But we have prepared the quality levels. If we would like to open, we have the quality levels. Why the city council is not opening the market yet? Because at this moment, we are doubting about the traffic safety issues. We really need to have proof that the traffic safety is not such a big issue. But at this moment, we do see that these e-scooter companies, they work in the range of 1 to maximum 2 kilometers. It are our pedestrian and cycle trips. They also knocked on the door, and I don't remember anymore if it was Burret of Lime, but Lime, they explained with very proud to us that the average distance that their users were doing with their e-scooters was 1.3 kilometer. Yeah, and when I hear that, they are really for Leuven scale in the range of pedestrian and cycling trips. I don't say they are not, that they won't be welcome in the future, but at this moment they are not welcome. Also because we fear it is still a complete mess regarding that free floating issue. And last but not least, but I am not going to into detail on that in this presentation, but I was now talking about the hardware. Clustering spatial place, service levels of our shared mobility services. But of course, there is also a software element, and the software element are all the MaaS apps, the MaaS platforms, where you can have the complete complete package of mobility services in one app. Also, the city of Leuven is not going to reinvent these kind of apps. That's for the private sector. There's a lot of innovation in that. But the city of Leuven is again putting the service level standards, especially regarding our strategy of mobility for all. And what do I mean by that? For our different separate shared mobility providers, we offer third payment services if they fulfill the standards and they get a license for social groups in our city that can't afford to pay the price of that electrical cargo bike. This issue of third payment services, it takes at this moment a lot of administration and software thing. We would like to automate it through rules and also to integrate it in MaaS systems. And this will also give a boost to the use of MaaS apps. And we are preparing it at this moment. And just to end my presentation in this whole ecosystem of MaaS, we are at the top level, the local authority, we have to offer space for shared mobility services. We have to set the service level standards, which shared mobility servers are welcome in our city. And we are also defining the service level standards, the quality level for MaaS providers that can get the third payment services towards our social groups. And this is the way we as a city are at the steering wheel of welcoming innovation on shared mobility services in our town. And I think this was my, and the last one, but I think Karen also mentioned it. We did get our inspiration in the first place from the Polis network, because we are really in interaction with a lot of cities that are dealing with the same problems. Also in this small and mid-sized city network, we do get a lot of inspiration. Also the International Transport Forum, they made, in my opinion, a very interesting publication on shared use city and managing the curb. It's that clever and dynamic space, public space management, where local authorities really have to take control and to stay in control. And that's explained in that publication of ITS. Thank you very much.